Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, the show that gives you a virtual seat at the bar for the real conversations that happen between entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing all kinds of business owners, from those just a few years into freelancing to CEOs helming 9-figure companies. If you've ever worried that everyone else just seems to get it and you're missing something or messing things up, this show is for you. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is my new friend, Ozzin Jun. Say hi.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. Thanks, Angie, for having me today.
Oh, yeah, I'm so excited. I like that neon sign. Okay, so not people are going to be listening and people are going to be watching the video, but she's got this lovely like pink neon sign behind her, and I just can't stop staring at it. So I imagine that's related to your business. Tell us a little bit more.
Yes, sure. So my name is Ozzin, and I'm known as the Wealth Queen because I started my whole journey being in 6-figure debt and trading my time for money. And then within the 8 months, I took action, started my coaching business that led to my first 6-figure cash months. And meanwhile, I serve a lot of coaches, consultants, and service-based businesses out there so they can skyrocket their business to 6-7 figures. And most importantly, that they create a life that they truly love. I think that scaling is not just about the money, but what I see is that people create a mind-blowing life that supports their lifestyle while they grow. So this is what Wealth Queen is about, that you're worthy of it all. Money, relationships, that you have your health, that you can kick ass, like this podcast says, like with your own movement, your own voice. And yes, I want to invite you to this movement.
Oh, I love that. And there's a couple reasons why. First of all, yes, shout out to Permission to Kick Ass. But like, I'm so tired of this narrative that success looks like one thing. You have to make 7 figures to have a successful business. You have to have 10K. Like, where all these milestones came from is somebody else's bullshit. And it's fantastic. Great bullshit for them, right? Made their life fantastic. But until you have taken the time to get to know you, how you work, the people that you work with, the work that lights you up, like all of these things play a role in designing your dream life and your dream business. And not everybody has the same dreams. I know an entrepreneur who literally lives in a converted school bus, a schoolie. That's S-K-O-O-L-I-E, schoolie. I don't know why that spelling sticks out to me, but lives in a schoolie, travels around the US playing musical gigs, and works for 6 months out of the year to save up to be able to just drive around and explore, right? I know people who have built up incredible like digital assets and a team underneath them and have built that $1 million business. But the point is, whatever this needs to look like for you, it starts with you. It's not Ozzin's business. It is not my business. It's yours. Sorry,
Exactly.
rant.
And you know what I feel? I feel that a lot of people, like, they look left and right. And I think one of the biggest shift for me that happened when I started out, like I didn't had yet the experience. So you just start out with the courage, you surrender to the learnings, and then you go. And I hired in the beginning a lot of male mentors in the coaching space, and guys operate very differently. They have their strategies, KPI, this is the way. And then I start to work with a lot of females, and they're like more intuitive in their flow, with their intuitions and so on. And I realized that both were important, but I still had to change my business model in a way that I wanted. Like the offers and the things that I do, like, do I want to be operating the way my coach did? But having this discernment, like finding out who am I, what is my movement, and then stop just blending in and doing the things that you think you're supposed to say, supposed to do to make that sale. And then because other people in your industry do it. And I think although we know that, it's just a reactivating reminder that we sometimes goes through and that I had to tell myself in order to stay in my lane to do the movement and to define success, as you mentioned.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up because it's so easy to get caught up in that narrative of what you should be doing. And I do love modeling on success, right? I'm not a big fan of reinventing the wheel just to like, I'm not Elon Musk and I'm not trying to be. I don't need to invent massive new technologies or whatever. But by the same token, if you were just blindly copying what other people do because they had success, like you're completely ignoring everything that's really awesome about you. It just frustrates me to no end. And this stuff, it's super sticky. It gets in your brain. It manifests. And I see this with my clients all the time. I help people with marketing, coach them on strategy. And well, I can't really say that because the formula looks like this. To that, I say, fuck the formula. Do what feels good to you because you're never going to learn what works for your business until you have the courage to try things. And yes, the formula may work and it may not work. Might as well be you.
I love that. No, but it's so true because I feel a lot of people are like, how can I do this? How can I get to this? What is the blueprint? What is the strategy? How do you do this? And I think that I always tell people, yes, how to, but also that who matters, the what and the context. And then sometimes I'm just like, screw it. Like strategy is so good. Like you need to be strategic too. But then the part where people really miss out is their personal power. And this is where self-leadership has been the greatest catalyst of my life. And I think this is where, when I tell people this is, like the leadership program will change your income, your health. And many people will say like, oh, I don't need that. But when it's like, hey, make your 10K, 100K, there are some people who like jump into that. But then when they're with me working, I realize that what they sometimes need is the deep work of emotional intelligence, worthiness. And I have this concept where I share, especially with a lot of women, like marrying yourself. You have to enter a relationship with yourself. And the more I did this work of like marrying myself, owning my worth, I realized that I got rid of toxic relationships. I started to make more money, own my zone of genius. And I think this is where a lot of people, especially women, like water down and go into the mode of like pleasing people, just being
Yes.
really nice instead of being badass in their
Yep.
movement.
Yep. Well, and I mean, I had a lot of fear. I've talked about this on the podcast many times before, but I grew up in the deep south of the United States. There's a lot of very like traditional male and female dynamics down here, a lot of pressure to like follow all the steps, right? Date somebody, get engaged, get married, move in together, have the babies, like follow the steps, right? I followed all the steps and it didn't bring me the happiness that was promised, right? And then I had to figure out, oh, well, now what? And I think that that's what happens with a lot of people who struggle with business, right? I wrote down and I underlined this a couple of times, like a focus on money and the connection to failure. Because I feel like people feel if they follow the steps, if they find the right formula, if they mimic what somebody else is doing, then they get their happiness. Like I've inserted my coin into the happiness vending machine and I just get to pull it out and it's going to be that easy. Sweetheart, that's not the way it works. This is going to be a lot of building. It's going to be a lot of experimenting. It's going to be a lot of discomfort and a lot of fear too, right? I imagine Wealth Queen wasn't the first iteration. Permission to Kick Ass was certainly not the first iteration for me. I used to blend in so badly that the first time that I told kind of an off-kilter story at a business event, people actually physically leaned in and went, "Who
Mhm.
is this? How did I not know this about you?" So, yeah, it's going to be an unlearning, but it's a wonderful unlearning.
I think it's so wonderful that you pointed out about this fear because I really realized that fear will always be there, but I've
Yes.
learned to put the fear into my passenger seat and I remain the driver of the whole vehicle. And then every time when fear comes in, I think this is more of a mentorship question, like how do I launch and do things while the fear is present? How do you navigate through that? And often people come, how do you create content? How do I strategize that? But often I think the depth of where some people are at is more the inner parts. And this is where I feel that like hugging in fears and then courageously still doing that. And sometimes knowing that even if you don't believe in something 100%, just believing in something for 51% and taking the step, you can still make shit tons of money while you have doubt, while you have fear. And I think just stretching this things like it has helped me so much because I started like as an introvert. I started as the type of girl that was not worthy of herself in toxic relationship. I went through rape, kidnap, abuse in 2019. And all of that compounded to some version as an identity where I started a bunch of things in the online space, which had no purpose to me. I was just, how can I make money online? Affiliate marketing, e-commerce, one thing after the other. And at some point, similar to you, I was not happy. And I zoomed out and then I was like, oh, I actually love to transform people's life. Like I'm here to empower people. And that's where I changed my beliefs around that. And I constantly evolve my brand. So I think people got to know, like, when you're listening to this, you're not married to your current identity, to your offers, to anything. And I think just having the courage to change and openly share, look, this is what it is. And most of the time, the audience understands and flows.
Absolutely. I love that you brought up the concept of leadership within this because, and I think you touched on it a bit with your story, when the focus is on how can I make money? How can I make money? I think that's where a big part of the disappointment stems from because when the money doesn't flow, then you start going, oh, well, what am I doing wrong? Is this me? Like, they tell me it's so easy to make money, $10,000 a month, martinis on the beach, whatever. But you have to be able to, and it's no secret on this show, look inward, exactly like you just said. What is happening in here? Why do I feel driven to do this? What's coming up for me when I hit this mark or I don't hit this mark? Like for a long time, one of my drivers was anger. I just needed to prove people wrong desperately. And then as I started to move out of anger and I started on my healing journey, I started to be driven a lot by validation. Oh, you're really smart. You know what's going on, right? And that's great. And then if the validation isn't forthcoming, you sink back into those old patterns of like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not? I'm comparing myself to other people, right? A lot of this stuff has to come from within. I am driven to create this. I am driven to help people in the world. I am driven to make money. Like it's you. It starts with you.
Exactly. I cannot agree more because I think when people go out there, I feel there's so much power that they give away. And I had to learn in my journey this struggle, like you're being a slave and you know that, like slave to the consumption, slave to validation. There are trolls in the internet and one person disagrees. And I found myself in the past, like justifying and explaining myself because I wanted to be like understood. I hated when people misunderstood me and they troll or say something. And then having whole discussions. And this is where I leaned back and I said, I don't negotiate with trolls. I don't care. Like, and this is where I felt all of these things taking my power back and not just being living in reaction had been a big journey. And it's still a process, but I feel like I've changed a lot of this part to tighten my leadership around that.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. And another thing that I wanted to highlight that you said was starting with courage. I think a lot of people wait for confidence to come, and that's a mistake. The fear is sitting there in the passenger seat, just like she said. You got to say, okay, cool. Well, and we're going to bravely tackle this anyway. And it's funny that you mentioned trolls because we talked a little bit about recording about, or maybe sometimes on recording day, these conversations bleed together. So forgive me if I didn't mention this to you, but not too long ago, I had an article and then a video series for Huffington Post go viral. And I had a lot of trolls in the comments. And I had a slightly different reaction, but it was with intent. It wasn't, you said reaction. And I like that you made that distinction, right? I deliberately spent the first couple of days in the comments of each of those pieces, interacting with everybody who was leaving a comment, positive or negative. And I was detached from what they said about me because I was able to, I think for one of the first times in my life, sit back and go, I was there. It really doesn't matter what anybody else's interpretation of this situation was. I know what it was because this is my lived experience. So no amount of some random internet stranger trying to rewrite this narrative and frame me as some evil person is actually the truth, right? And that was deliberate on my part because of algorithms, right? If it shows a lot of engagement and a lot of controversy, this is going to get out to more people. And ultimately, I wanted more people who were going to get hope and inspiration from my situation, which was about, and I'll link this in the show notes. It was about being unexpectedly dumped right as I was starting to grow this business and start the podcast. Those are the people that I cared about reading this. Everybody else that had an opinion on my life, that's what I say.
I love this. No, but I think it's great what you mentioned. And there's actually a quote that my boyfriend said. It's really funny. It's like opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one and it stinks.
Yes.
And it's so true. And I think that One of the first things that helped me to step more into my power has been to shake off all those labels, those titles, those limitations, and those comments from people throughout life. And then just being really solid. Again, if you know who you are, what you're up to, you know yourself, you did a great job. Like you can clap for yourself. And I used to be like you, giving my power away. So, for example, sometimes to even my own parents, I go to my mom and say, "Hey, mom, I got my first client at my 10K." And although I know she's really supportive and there for me, there are times where the reaction was not as I expected. And she's like, "Oh, great. Can you close the door?" And I was like, "That's all." And then I was like, "Sure, no problem." But then
Where's my
like
parade, mom? Come on.
and I really realized that the more I seek this claps or the celebrations or this compliments or like I expected this, I realized just give it to myself. Like, oh, you did a great job, and then move on. And then obviously have the right support system, the people who do celebrate you. I think it's so important as well. And money loves the frequency of celebration. But I think just like knowing yourself, you're more than enough and you're amazing. And when you know that, like you're good.
Yes, that is so brilliant. Why do we wait for other people to give that to us? Why do we have such a problem with giving it to ourselves?
Yes, it's so true.
And we're so willing to celebrate for a lot of the people that we care about, right? Oh my God, you started that bit. Oh my God, you wrote that book. Yay. And then when it comes to us, it's like, I wrote a book. Now I got to market it. Now I got to do it. Like all of the self-judgment and the feeling like you're perpetually behind kicks in and we can't celebrate. Celebrate that shit. Celebrate it. It's important.
Even like when I go through days, there are so many times I do want to mention where self-sabotage is a big thing. And I think when you're somebody like me, like high performing, super on fire, I have this vision. I see so many high performers out there. And this is a very strange duality. I feel that a lot of the successful people that I interviewed, they know themselves, they're hell good in what they do. Like they know, like, oh my God, I'm so good in that. Like, how can you not be my world? And at the same time, I feel like they are the ones who feel not enough the most in a way of like, is this not enough good? There's self-sabotage. And I really realized that these type of things, this duality is really interesting. And also the successful people are super patient, but at the same time, they're the most impatient people you will ever meet. Like in their urgency and their things. And I feel that, again, just like being solid, trusting your move, and then operating from a place of your love and what makes you happy instead of like looking outside, it helps so much in keeping you sustainably happy and also profitable and, just like your purpose in life.
Mm, absolutely. And I mean, the danger in relying on other people to help you maintain your happiness, right? Is that disappointment, is the potential for them to misunderstand or just not get. I read somewhere once that true freedom is the allowing people to misunderstand you.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep, okay, cool. That's what happened with the trolls. That's what happened when I turned off that need. And it's still it pops up. It's an ingrained thing that I have to go, okay, I recognize you. You're seeking validation right now. And we don't actually need that because we have that from ourselves, right? Little inner Angie, we've got our own permission to kick ass, right? That's the whole mission behind this. They don't have to get it. Everybody doesn't have to get it. There's more than 8 billion people somewhere around there on this planet, and I can't possibly work with or serve all of them. So it's okay if some people don't want to come along. Totally cool.
Yeah, I agree with you fully on this.
Mm-hmm. So, tell me more about financial coaching, because you did mention starting out 6 figures in debt. What made you decide to pursue this? Was it just your own personal journey, something else? I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. So entrepreneurship has been on my table where I had this idea when I was 18. Firstly, I started out as an artist, and it came from the fact that I was born into an artistic family. I love drawing, painting, like really the traditional arts of things. And I was back then in school, and I didn't see a point to be in school when I want to be an artist. So at some point, I called a friend from New York and I told him, like, hey, I really want to come to New York. It's so artistic. I want to go to art school. And then he said to me, like, hey, just come. And I said, I can't. I have school. He said, well, then just quit and come. I'm like, just like that? And it's like, yeah, why not? And I've been really thinking about this, and it didn't take me too long. And then 3 days later, I went to my mom and I told her, hey, I have a dream. Like, I want to go to New York and become an artist. And then coming from an Asian household, it's very strict. There are certain expectations, go to school, get a degree, and so on. And surprisingly, my mom said, if that's what you want, go for it. I support you. I wish as a mom that you finish school, but if you really feel this is the way, I'll let you do what you want. So I took this decision. I flew to New York, and then I was for 1 year a freelance artist. However, I realized very fast that this is not the path I want to pursue, because drawing for 10 hours is very different drawing for 2 hours as a hobby. So I've learned through my journey, like try things out pragmatically. And that led me back to be in university for 1 year, because I found a study that connects design and business, which I loved. And then during during the university time, I started my side hustles where I was typing in, how can I make money? So as earlier addressed, all my stages where I did a bunch of things in the online space, I got scammed. Things sometimes didn't work out. I did invest in myself, my self growth, but it didn't went the way I wanted to certain stuff. And all of the stuff stacked up and other personal things. And it led to like 6-figure debt. And I came down to such a breaking moment emotionally, also with 2019, where I had the whole rape situation, kidnapped with an ex-boyfriend that did this. And then I went missing and I didn't show up in school for 1 month. So all of these personal stories, it impacted me during these dark times to to feel so much pain that I couldn't bear it. And I thought like, okay, let's turn this selfie stick, because I have to help other women out there and get through this. And this is where my purpose emerged for coaching, of like, I'm not here just to heal you. I'm here to activate you so you can make the money, go out there, be in a relationship that you're worthy of. And I'm sick of the story that we have to be like boss babes and sacrifice all your stuff. And this is where I had to learn a lot to transition from the toxic to the healthy relationships. And it led me to evolve as I go to, hire a coach, go all in. I made my 6-figure cash, and then things just blew off as I go, because I showed up as this new powerful person. And that came from so much pain that was compounding before.
Well, okay, so there's something there that stood out to me. Like, I hired a coach, this took off, right? And we hear that a lot with people, especially in the online, like make money online space. But the distinction that I heard that I really want to highlight for people is I showed up. So I think a lot of people stop at, I hired a coach, I bought a program. And, okay, I've studied psychology for a long time, especially as it pertains to how people make buying decisions, because that's my background as a marketer, right? A lot of people, and this will be critical for everybody here in business. If you don't already know this, you're going to learn it real quick. They feel like they got the win as soon as they bought the thing, and they won't actually do anything once they've bought the thing, because they already got the dopamine hit that they needed from quote unquote solving the problem by buying the solution, right? So you can't just hire a coach and not do the stuff. You can't just buy a program and not do the stuff. This is going to be about showing up for yourself, exactly like you said.
Oh my God, big applause for this. No, this is a huge thing. I think where a lot of people, like, also for context, when I tell people, oh, you made like 6-figure cash within your first 8 months in coaching, how is that possible? So I always tell people, before that, I was already in online space. So people forget about that part. I was stacking up my skill set before, and I showed up like sometimes 2, 3 a.m. in the mornings. And I'm not here to support like the hustle culture, but I was just that committed. Like, it was my passion and I was so determined. So for me, it worked. And then I felt like in my journey, it's like less about, oh, did your uni dropout help you to succeed? Was it that coach that helped you? Was it that program? And I always tell people, it's my freaking decision that I choose the ROI of this program. And it's not because of my uni dropout. Like, I don't care if I'm school or that. Like, I would have succeeded anyways because I choose that. And this is where a lot of people like feel, as you mentioned, they get this dopamine. Oh, and then they complain, yeah, what a scam. And I'm like, well, everything's a scam if you don't take freaking action on it. So this is a big, big highlight. Like, that this is so important to do the work, to do the actual work. And sometimes, even though I am a person that puts in the work, I had to catch myself sometimes in the journey where I was very sick and say, oh, there was no client. This is not going well. And I asked myself, did you do the work? And sometimes my answer was actually not. I did
Mm-hmm.
some of the work, but I didn't implement it and show up so potent in the way I could. And this is this subtle, the micro shifts that I had to tweak. And I feel that some people who are listening and they know like they could be doing a lot, they have this knowing and this knowledge. I think they know the next step, but it's like always the doing. Like, are you
Mm-hmm.
doing it? And are you doing it powerfully? Not just doing it, but like in your power.
Yes. I love that concept. To me, that just sounds like radical ownership, right? If stuff is not going right with the business, it's on me. And I don't mean that in the, oh my God, I'm a failure, I'm a fuck up, I'm never going to get it right sense. I mean that in the, what else could I be doing sense. Okay, here's what I did, here's what the results were. Was that something that I could have changed with different actions? What are those actions? How can I do better moving forward? Sometimes it's not something that you can change. Like I've mentioned several times, a couple years ago, Texas froze over, right? A lot of marketing campaigns failed that day. That's not something that I can change. I can't control the weather. If I could, I'd be out there causing chaos, just so you know. We're talking fire tornadoes. But
Yeah.
anything I can set on fire, I like to set on fire. But you got to look at what you can do. And one of my coaches says all the time, making money is boring. Making a lot of money is really boring because we get distracted by all these shiny objects and all of the new tactics and the things that, right? Who even remembers Clubhouse from a few years ago when that was like the next big thing that's going to revolutionize everything? I am so glad I'm a late adopter. Like I wait a couple years to jump on any given trends. And yeah, I probably miss out on some things, but I also don't have old accounts just hanging out in platforms I don't use anymore.
No, but I love this. I think it's a lot of distraction, shiny object syndrome out there. And I think it's very tempting for people to be able like to change up their strategies. They're like, oh, I have to make this a bit more complicated. Let's add some more problems into that. And they look for new ways. And then this is the new trend. And I always say, you are the freaking trend. Like you are the things. And I felt like where I went really different in my life is like not just like fall into what people do, but then always ask myself, does that actually make sense to me? Like, does my stuff work? Am I happy with that? Okay, so continue. Like I'm the freaking trend in the house and I do the things the way I do. And I feel this is where a lot of the people who are trendsetters and they stick to their lane, they skyrocket in a way where they stand out in the crowd very differently. So yeah, I mean, if you know how to leverage trends, good for you, but always like stick to your original movement and don't forget who you are and what already works in your business.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I want that to be flying over everybody on like a blimp right now. An airplane banner. Just be yourself, be true to you, do what feels good to you. You're going to learn so much more from following your own instincts and putting your own twist on certain things than you are from following other people and going, why didn't this work? It worked for so and so. They guaranteed me results. First of all, anybody that's guaranteeing you results, there's no guarantees in life except that we're all going to die. Like, come on, guys, take a little bit more ownership. And I love, I love that you pointed out that a lot of the people online screaming scam are the people that are just not doing the work. We said what we said. If you have strong feelings about it, look inward.
No, but it comes down to radical self-responsibility. And I think this is something that a lot of the people who are crushing it in the online space, and not just entrepreneurs, also in private life, like how many people are not entrepreneurs and they are not self-responsible and they're always judging, it's my cat, it's my neighbor, it's my church, I cannot do this, it's my boyfriend's fault. And I think that like, you know, the finger pointing while people are doing that, like they're not pointing to themselves. And I feel every time when I viewed myself as the generator in life, as all of the results that I'm doing, the good and bad, as you mentioned, I think it allows you to take your whole life on a next level to improve and also for the business to skyrocket.
And to clarify or maybe to add the distinction here for folks. And I say this for anybody that's been a long time listener, they know that I am somebody that tends to like beat myself up right? And a lot of us that are neurodivergent or creative feel the same way. Like, I'm not talking about looking inward, like looking for things that are wrong with you, looking for reasons why you shouldn't be doing this. That's a completely different line of thought that I absolutely do not support. What we're talking about is looking at your actions as objectively as possible and saying, okay, here's what exactly, like, here's the facts. Here's what I did. Here's where that led. Was there something I could do differently? Cool. I'm going to go ahead and own that. And that ties, I think, to something else that you said about hustling, because I'm pro hustle and I'm anti grind, is what I call myself. Like, grinding is painful. Let's not do that. That's how bodies get destroyed and machines get destroyed, and it just calls to mind Jack and the Beanstalk, and it's awful, right? Like, there are going to be times in your business where you have to work really hard. And there are going to be times when you can take your foot off the gas and coast for a little while because the things that you've built are working the way that you hope they would work. But like, we've got to be a little bit more flexible, forgiving, gentle with ourselves while still holding ourselves accountable and keeping that foot on the gas until we got where we don't want to go.
Yeah. And I think what you mentioned, I want to highlight this because I've seen a lot of the people who are like multi 7 figures and multi 6 figures, and they sometimes come on podcasts and content. They're like, yeah, I'm anti hustle culture. Like, you got to work smart, just do it this less, less work and more impact. And while I really agree on this, every time when I look at successful people, I don't think they just work smart. And I always believe in the work, deep work, hard work, in all the ways. And then I also see that a lot of the people who later, like, they have a scalable business model and not, and then they say like, yes, I'm working now 3 hours a day sometimes, and this is true. But I think a lot of people, they miss out on the context, setting the things up, nurturing the freaking audience, building things up. I think what people don't see is the blood, sweat, tears behind like 10, 20 hours of work sometimes. And it's just a reality. So I feel that having both in the things of like smart and hard, work highly in your wisdom and your integrity, and deep as well in your work that no one else does. Like, everything matters in a holistic sense.
Mm-hmm. That's so fun. The thought that popped into my mind was, I've worked with a lot of copywriting is my background in marketing. I've worked with a lot of freelancers who are up and coming copywriters. And one of the things that comes up in those circles a lot is this idea of like, well, I underestimated the time. So now can I go back to the client and bill more? And I always tell them, no, because this is part of the learning journey. You can try, but I'm willing to bet that you're setting that relationship on fire if you go back to them and be like, all right, well, this is like twice as much as I quoted you. Nobody likes a surprise bill. Ask yourself how much you love being hit with a surprise bill. And I'm like, and I'm not asking you to undercharge yourself, but I'm encouraging you to embrace the learning curve, even the painful moments, because you're going to undercharge for things. You're going to overestimate your capability for things, especially if you're in a service business or a creative business. Deliver what you promised by when you promised for the price that you promised. Do a good job. Don't be a resentful piece of shit about it. And then immediately for the next project, you go, okay, cool. Well, we need twice as much money for that in an extra week to get that done, right? Deliver what you promised, be a person of your word, and then use that experience to get even better.
I love that. And that goes with the value of integrity. And I think honesty is the best like company policy that you can have. And I also think that one of the things that really helped me, my client retention, because people are always like new clients, new clients. And I think yes to that, but also yes to keeping your clients and doing the best. And I think where I changed my thought was like, if my old clients that are loyal and working with me for already 1 year, I always treat them as if they're my new clients. So if they're already 3 months, I'm like, how can I treat them? So I send them flowers. I obviously focus on the job itself to solve their main thing, and then always like go deeper. And I feel this is where a lot of the people sometimes go out of integrity and they overpromise, they overhype, and they put those bonuses, those discounts, those extras. And I feel that the ideal client doesn't need that. Like, you're the freaking bonus. The solution that you have is already enough. And I think that just being honest, like, no, this is not the way it works. This is the context we bring. This is not the guarantee. Like, again, it's on you. You have to put in the work, but I will do this. I think just being radical honest about the expectations, it just sets up so much for the client success in the future as well.
Mhm. That's so freaking smart to treat your existing customers like new customers. That focus on constant client acquisition is so bass backwards. Like I freaking hate that because all right, cool, we've won the business. Put them in that bucket over there and continue to focus on new business. No, go take care of them. Make sure that they have an excellent, amazing experience because then they're going to go bring in more people.
Yeah.
I almost call myself in marketing kind of a back end specialist. I know that there are a lot of folks that focus on the ads and the lead gen and things like that, but I really like looking at people's audiences and going, okay, what can we do with what we've already got? Because I bet we could do a whole lot more with these people, especially if you've been super focused on growing your business through ads or whatever else you're doing to invest in that.
I love this. I'm doing tomorrow a podcast. Sorry, not podcast. I'm doing tomorrow a masterclass about this. And
Mm-hmm.
I made today a post about it's not your visibility problem. It's usually a messaging problem. And
Yep.
people always say it's the algorithm. It's that I need to get new clients. And I always say to people, like, if you're not currently getting new clients from your existence audience, it's because your clients are seeing it, but they're not activated to buy because you're not specific enough how their problem is showing up and how you're going to be the solution. And I
Mm-hmm.
think where a lot of people like, they're like always the next, the next. And as you mentioned, like, look what you have, be resourceful, go inwards, take care of your clients, and they're going to be your best ambassadors for your business. And then things like happen like automatically in magnetism, how people come to your world.
Oh yeah. And to tack onto that too, like, and talk to your clients and talk to people who didn't buy. Put your, I know that we all joke these days about like, oh, why are you calling me? Send me a text message, right? But actually practice talking to people and building a human relationship, just like we are doing right now, talking on this Zoom call. We've never spoken before, guys. And like, look at how close we've gotten, how comfortable we've gotten talking about deep stuff in just one call in less than an hour, right? Practice this. It's going to become so much more important in the age of AI as people are putting more barriers between themselves and people, and they're getting more deficient in how to have hard conversations, how to react and respond in a way that saves the relationship when you've done wrong, because you're going to screw it up, right? We're all going to screw up. We're human. That's the nature of the game. But like, talk to people. Your clients will tell you why they didn't buy. They will tell you why they did buy. They'll tell you what else they want to hear from you. You don't have to guess at this shit. You just have to get good at talking to
Yeah.
people.
Yes. No, it's so true. I think that just asking the clients, like, hey, what is it right now you're going through? What did you like the most? Like, just having a basic conversation, it gives you the idea for the next courses, the next services, the improvements around that. And then guess what? Even like for content, I think the most asked client questions are your best content piece to answer that. So I think people overthink that part too much instead of like just show up as who you are. And I think content feels for a lot of people heavy because they're not truly authentic to what they want to say, what they feel. And then again, what's out there in terms of their clients, like they're not going as deep. And I feel the moment you just stop thinking of like, how should the copy be so people, buy from me? And because I started out as a copywriter, I understand the power of copy. But again, it doesn't work when you're not in your power and just focus only on the tactics, the method. This is the way I should say this. So it has to be both.
Oh, yeah. We reiterate, fuck the formula. Do what feels good
Yes.
for you. Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's one question that I had that I got sidetracked from my little tangents here. But so you started this business, like, and you said that it took off. Was it all smooth sailing? Were there any setbacks? Were there any moments that you were like, oh my God, I don't know if I can continue doing this. I don't know if this is the right path.
Oh my God, many, so many. I'm not gonna lie about this. Like, obviously, like things are going way better than it used to when I started. So in the beginning, when I started with that coach, so it comes after the investment, it took me around 60 days, like 2 months, 2.5 months to sign my first client. And And, in the process, I've been like always like consistent. I believed in myself, but there were times it was harder to show up because again, it's my first client. I feel like people are not watching me. Why am I doing this? And then I had my client and then I had this positive evidence. Oh, it works. And then I served the client, happy client. And then I had the second and the third, and it was slow. And then as I went, I did my first master class. And that blew up to $43,000 in 90 minutes. And I was mind blown. Like, I was like, oh my God, it's my first masterclass. How is this possible? And people loved what I did, what I offered, because I embodied my teachings. And then from their moments, like I reached my six-figure cash months in December 2021. And it came from the momentum through the masterclass where people still came and texted me through my content, and it compounded. And my brain was like, oh, you're so rich, man. Like you went from six figures to six-figure cash. And I felt so much in this aggressiveness of like, oh, it has to scale. I'm going to make soon my millions, like go forwards. And then actually the opposite happened. I had a one hit in December. And then in January, February, upcoming year, it was a little bit of a roller coaster because again, I felt I made this mistake of not setting up the system in a way that was like sustainable, repeatable, recurring income. I was just like big cash injections. And it was more of a lottery. One day there's a client, 1 month there is maybe not too many. And it was up and down. And then I've learned through all of this to, again, go deeper, build recurring, long-lasting income. And again, wealth creation, wealth queen. We're here for the long term. And this is where I build the things and the systems and my approaches in a way that is sustainable. So having an offer suite at different price points, selling out my low mid ticket to the high ticket spaces, and all of the things that could be done. So I have the recurring and the big cash injections. And, in theory, when you look at this, like it sounds super logic and super smart, but when you're actually doing it, like, again, the skill set, and I had to invest all I could to close my skill gaps in that, because I believe you never have an income gap. It's always skill gaps, your traits around that, your belief system. So when you look at these three things, this is where I failed a lot in some moments. And I wanted to sometimes rip off my whole business, like crying, not being able to sleep, being anxious, not feeling enough. Shit, should I go to a job back? And feeling like a scam yourself, because I was a business coach. So when you make a lot of money, like, oh, I feel so much in my power. And then when things went down, I'm like, oh, am I allowed to teach that? Like, I feel like myself not good. But then I was like, when you master something, it doesn't take away of what you already could. And this is the part where I always tell people, you're allowed and it's normal to struggle, because that's the beauty as a duality, as a mentor and coach. You are always in your own journey and you struggle, but you teach people and you have the full permission to do that and teach that and extract the wisdom, and people will do the same. And this is where, again, I build things up. It was so much better. And now I have a business model in a way that supports, but that was a process. Like, it was really tough. Yeah.
Oh man, that's such a great story. And part of me wants to dig even more into that. And the rest of me goes, oh man, we're right up against time. But that seems like such a great note to end it on, that you have, permission, at the risk of belaboring the point, to do the thing, to do it well, then to do it not so well, and then to get up and try again. Like, human power is fantastic. You get to be a human in business, you get to be you in business, and you get to figure it out. It's fantastic. And then you've got wonderful people like me, like Ozzin. We're going to be here. Reach out. So, speaking of reaching out, tell us more about where we can learn about you. What's your website? What's it got?
Yeah, sure. So you can connect with me on my socials, mainly on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. I'm going to put my links below. I also have a free community called the Wealth Queen Collective, where I share free trainings on how you can scale your business and deeper insights about self-leadership. So you can also join the link. And once you join, you will get a present from me about audios and other trainings that will help you to activate your power. And yes, I also have my own podcast. So the Inspiration Science podcast about mental health, which is so important, by the way, your
Yes.
health. I interview people. So if you have a great story and you want to talk about your mental health story, I'm weekly interviewing people. And about my personal journey and more business insights, you can follow the Wealth Queen podcast, like my logo behind this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to make sure that there are clickable links in the show notes. Man, I appreciate you. This has been such a great conversation.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me, Angie. I love this. And again, as you mentioned, although we just met today, I think there's so much depth into that. And for everyone who's listening, like, make connections. I think life is too short, and it's about the depth of things. And it's always gets interesting and stuff that comes up. Like through this podcast, I felt I had great reminders for me as well. And we learn a lot of wisdom from people when we're open to receive it.
Absolutely. That's all for now. If you want to keep that kick-ass energy high, please take a minute to share this episode with someone that might need a high-octane dose of "you can do it." Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Permission to Kick-Ass podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you stream your podcasts. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and I'm here rooting for you. Thanks for listening, and let's go kick some ass.